This is Andrew for CollectionDX.com taking a look at Bandai's new DX Chogokin Sv-262Hs Draken ⅲ in the White Knight Keith Aero Windermere's colors. So, this is the latest and greatest antagonist Valkyrie from Macross Delta. In fighter mode, it is about 11 inches long, and when you compare it to the main hero Valkyrie, the Veef-31 Siegfried, you can see it's just a little bit shorter than that toy. It feels a little bit lighter. There is not as much die-cast metal in this one than the previous figure, and when we get into it, in a lot of ways, this is kind of a step back from the triumph that was the Siegfried. So, as far as features in fighter mode, couple things you can do. Well, the large beam cannon on the underside features a couple of neat things. One is when you're getting the airplane ready to land, you actually do fold the fin up here, and that's kind of neat. Reminds me of when I built a MiG-23 model with my father as a child. The beam cannon itself can come forward a bit. Oh, and it also comes off. It plugs onto this little articulated arm here. So what you want to do is just kind of make sure that stays on there, and it can swivel left and right and pitch up and down a bit, just like in the show. When you're bringing it back, just make sure that you put this little exhaust part in the back underneath this part here, this little covering that's actually part of one of the arms. It has full set of die-cast landing gear. I'll get to that in a minute. Tampograph, as far as the tampograph markings go, they're all pretty nice. It seems like everything is here. I haven't had the problem that some people have reported where when they take off the protective film, it seems like bits of this white number come off with it. Yeah, so watch for that. It has the whole covered armored canopy here because they have that neat holographic virtual environment thing in the show when you bring it up, and kind of owing to that you have Keith in his flight suit, not in the holographic I'm not actually wearing my flight suit but I am gimmick from the show. But yeah, he's a nice little well painted figure, and kind of like with Hayate and Freya, there's a lot of paint on that little guy. One neat thing, if you want to display your Draken with kind of a more traditional canopy, they did include a clear piece. It's pretty much the same piece, just cast in clear plastic, so it does have, oddly enough, like little sensors bolted into it, but you just kind of wiggle this thing left and right a bit to get it to come out, and there you go. So now it's a more traditional airplane canopy, looking a bit more like the real-life Saab Draken that the Draken ⅲ was very much inspired by. That is an airplane that many aviation enthusiasts find to be quite beautiful, Shoji Kawamori included. But yeah, so you can see swapping between the two canopies is very easy. Next, I'm just going to show you the display stand real quick. Like with the VF-31, it's just kind of the generic hatch thing. It's all black plastic except for the armature that holds the thing. And to put the landing gear away, you actually just fold the main wheels in half. Fold the main wheels in half, stick them down, close the doors. And with the front gear, you might just want to pull this up a little bit. Get that down and put that in there. Now, when you're trying to bring out the doors for the front gear, it might actually be helpful if you bring up this part of this hatch here, this panel, because that's part of the transformation, so you can just get your finger in there to bring those up in case it's just a little too tight. Alright, so here, the way to mount this on the stand is there's just a couple of gaps right here, and a couple of gaps right here between the feet nozzles and the back of the plane. And for this one, oh, you can also straighten out the fin. for this one, you actually just sort of rest it on there. It doesn't really click in place, which is weird, but does stay put though. So nothing's gonna like knock this thing off of the stand, but just be aware of that. So with the transformation into Garwalk mode, conceptually it's actually pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, in execution, Bandai just kind of made it more of a chore. Also, the instruction manual and the video that Bandai put out are really bad at showing you how to do Garwalk mode, so hopefully I will be able to clarify some things that they messed up on. Alright, so to start off, there is a tab that goes from the wing into the leg right here. You're going to bring this up like that. Do it on both sides. Coming down to the bottom here, you're going to want to just take the gun off for this transformation. You could leave it on, but it's easier just to remove it entirely. There's a pair of panels right here that flip up, and there's another pair of panels right here that are attached to the fronts of the intake section here, and those go up as well. I think one problem that I have with this figure is a lot of these joints are a little too tight, and also there's a lot of actual like sharp pointy bits that just dig into your flesh. Okay, so you're going to notice this is really rattly on my figure for some weird reason. So anyway, you're just going to bring the legs out like this. You can get them ready for Garwalk mode if you like. Bring the feet forward just like that. Bring out the heel. Flip up. This is the locking mechanism that keeps the legs helps keep the legs together for fighter mode. So on that side, you just have the single piece. This side has a little flip out tab that just neatly hides away. All right, and what you're gonna do? You're gonna bring this part back. So this whole section here, the whole dorsal spine of the airplane, this is both arms that are actually laying like kind of back to back. So what you're going to do is bring this up, and as you do that, you're going to bring kind of the hands out as well. You can also wiggle this thing back, the other arm, like that. So we got the arms in position. We're going to leave those alone for a little bit. Although one thing I do want to point out with this part of the transformation is when you have the hand, this is the right hand, when you're putting this thing back into fighter mode and you want to fit the hand underneath, just right behind where the cockpit is, the way the fingers need to be positioned, and they're very clear about this in the video, the index finger has two joints. It needs to be curled up as much as possible. The three-finger hand chuck needs to be right against the palm, and the thumb, which is on just a little joint that allows it to kind of wiggle like that, needs to be against the index finger. And not doing so means you might break the toy. So thanks for that, Bandai. So next up, so you want to get this bit a little bit out of the way. This section here, this is the crotch of the Battroid mode and Garwalk mode. It comes backwards a little bit, and it also angles downward. So as you're doing that, so basically what you're doing is kind of trying to bring this whole thing back. There, you get it out of the way there. Bring this thing back and just kind of like move the main hip joints out of the way, just like this. Problem is the hip joints on my copy are very tight, so it can make it difficult to do. Alright, so here's another bit of, you don't have to take this piece off, but you might want to do it just for your own sanity. The whole main tail fin does come off. It just easily slides off its little joint, and you can just kind of leave that to the side for now. Again, you can keep it on, but this is just sort of for clarity and the fact that I'm reaching around a camera right now. So with the front sections here of the intakes, these are on their own little joint like that, and you're going to position them at a 45-degree angle. They kind of feel like they have a little bit of like a soft click when they go into that position, but not really. So you're going to leave those like that. Next, what you're going to do is you can start to mess around with the arms right here. So with the arms, you're going to rotate this whole section like that, bring the shoulders out. They're on their own little double joints right here. And this section here is made to go inwards a bit on the little joint that it spins on. Fortunately, they keyed it so there's only like one way to do this. So it either goes in this way or it goes in just this way. And when it's parallel to the rest of the body, it just kind of stays at the right proper height. So okay, you can leave those alone for now. Next, what you want to do, and this is where things get a little bit messy. So you have the crotch section here, and you can see it comes out like that. This little codpiece guard here that moves on its own little joint as well. And then there's this gray section here, and this thing can angle up and down. So for Gearwalk mode, you want it at the 45-degree angle. For Battroid mode, at just parallel with the main body. So do that, and you want to bring this part down as far as it'll go. It might go farther than you think. It's kind of a little bit of fiddling, because this thing does go, again, in the little gray section does go in fairly far. So once you do that, you're going to want to bring the legs forward like this, and hope that not everything gets undone as you're doing it. Again, these joints are just a little too tight for what needs to be accomplished. So you're going to want to put these like that. And when you bring this back down, the pointy part of the thighs is going to rest right underneath the front part of the intake section. So you got to get that, kind of get it into the right position. And there's multiple Gearwalk joints in here for getting things all set up. There's some ankle tilts right there. And in the instructions, what they want you to do is you flip up this little gray lock here, and that is going to go into the back right here, just like that. Basically the widest part, like right behind where the cockpit is. They want you to do this before locking in the main crotch section here. I'm going to just go in reverse. So because I found that to be easier. Also, when you're bringing this whole section up, just be aware that you may need to adjust the wings, which are on these little double hinge section here. Just kind of adjust it backwards a bit, just kind of like that and like that, so that the tip right here doesn't slam into this hinge right here. They mentioned in the instructions that this whole section is fragile. What they mean by fragile is you're going to end up at some point just kind of mashing these parts together, and it might ruin the tips, the kind of nice sharp aerodynamic edges. But it's not really fragile in that sense. It's just sort of like you're mangling the toy too much. So with this bottom section here, you have these little C-clips that are on the main hinge right there, and they're going to go on the end of this little two-pegged joint here. You want this down for, actually no, you want this up for Gearwalk mode. It's down for fighter mode. So put that up. You're going to bring this in, and then if everything is in the right position, I think this is kind of the big issue with the Gearwalk mode, this should come in and be in the right place to snap together. And that's one of my biggest frustrations with the Gearwalk mode on this toy, is it just kind of feels really hard to get this all lined up. And it doesn't help that there's also like a waist joint buried like right in there, so this whole section can twist a little bit as well. So you kind of have to like hold this, which is on its own little moving joint, you know, and again, make sure that this is all like in kind of the right area where it needs to be. So all this stuff is moving at the same time. So yeah, you have to make sure you get this all kind of in the right place. Okay, one thing I forgot. This actually does kind of have a place to go. It's like not maybe like 30 degrees, maybe not 45 degrees, so we can just push forward a little bit and get this at the right place where it needs to snap in. But yeah, that's the frustration of this Draken toy. So I got one side in. Let's get the other side in. There we go. All right, so with the arms, what you can do, there's kind of multiple little swing arms going on here. Bring down the main arm, bring out the shoulder pauldrons like that. So basically give this whole section enough space to rotate, because it's going to, this is how it's oriented in Gearwalk mode. And to kind of lock the upper section here into the back, like I said, you just have to bring this in here. And part of the problem is that, again, you have to reposition these main wing sections, and with the double joint, sometimes one of these joints is tighter than the other. Again, at least on mine. So it can be kind of hard to like wiggle all this stuff properly into place. So once you do that, this whole thing also can slide forward and back to kind of give you a bit more room to play with. Yeah, so just kind of get that in there, and there it goes. All right, so more or less we're done with the Gearwalk mode. Just kind of have to put the arm back together right here. You can see there's just multiple little panels that make up the left arm, the arm which becomes the rear fin in the back of the plane in fighter mode. Bring these up, and again they're gonna just kind of work their way past, so that this little notch here, there's a little notch at the end, is going to line up with the hinge right there for those underside panels, which are now on top of the plane. Alright, so you just kind of get this into the proper position. You rotate the wings forward. Basically just pull this up a little bit, it'll disengage, and that comes forward. You pop this up, flip the whole wing down like that, and just kind of reposition things a little bit. The ankle swivels on mine also make this really disturbing squeak when I move them. That's also not good. So you got the kind of your typical Gearwalk joint right there. You bring that back. Do that. Take out the tail fin, and it just splits apart to form the shield. Get your finger in there somewhere. There it goes. Get your finger in there. It splits apart just like that. There's a couple of little tabs here, and that's how it locks in for fighter mode. And to get this into shield mode, you just lock the front tabs together. Flip this part up here on the arm. And again, you could leave this attached while you're transforming the toy, but it might just make you upset if you do. Take the beam cannon and reattach that. So, the Draken in Gearwalk mode. To the toy's credit, after all that effort, which honestly, it's not the smoothest transformation, you do get one really neat and rather unique looking Valkyrie Gearwalk mode. It's actually meant to invoke the Zentradi Officer Battle Pod, or the Glodge, that's how you say it, from the original Macross, as you can kind of see with the nose cone, the big legs, and of course the beam cannon on top of here. Not much else you can do with this thing in this mode. If you want to use the arm-mounted Vulcans, they slide forward, and these actually do pop up. They're supposed to be able to pop up in fighter mode as well, but the barrels don't retract, so you can't get it past this little cowl here. If you want to have these out in fighter mode, you're going to have to take the arm out and move them upwards first before you do that. You're also going to notice that these little flaps on the ankles here. Again, one which is loose on mine, and I'm not sure if a part fell out when I was playing with it, or a part just wasn't there when I got the toy, because that would be kind of disappointing. But those get out of the way of the ankles when you're playing around with it. An interesting thing about the extending leg joints here is they actually have a spring-loaded mechanism, so that there's no like halfway. You can kind of see like that. It always wants to be out. Unless you put it in all the way, then it'll lock in place. So that's kind of interesting. But again, just pop it out, and it's there. Also, there's a little spring-loaded door that keeps the front part filled in as you're moving it around. So last thing you can do with this in its gear walk mode is get the little stand adapter out. It's going to go in here with a little cradle that goes against the crotch right there. And you're just kind of trying to find the right place that it will click on right there. Actually, there's a little tab here that's going to go right against that. Actually, this one goes against this little bit in the back here. This one goes into this little section right there. So again, it just kind of rests on there, but it's not a huge problem because it will stay in place. You just gotta kind of finagle it until everything feels good. There it goes. So here we are, Sv-262 in gearwalk mode up on the stand. Thankfully, the transformation to Battroid mode is a lot smoother. Alright, so for Battroid mode, I'm going to do the same thing and just kind of leave this off to the side and the gun as well. So to continue on, you need to undo these two locked sections above and below. Get your finger in there and undo those little C-clips like that. You are going to bring this whole area as it rotates on these two little sides up and around like that. Bring the intake sections out and forward a bit. You're going to feel them like click a little bit as you're doing it. And as you're bringing this up, you can undo that little section I showed you earlier in the fighter mode transformation. It has a little hinge on this part of the panel right here, and there's just a couple of bits that are going to go in here to make a main tab at the bottom there. You can bring this out like that, put this forward. Again, you want to have this gray section parallel with the body for Battroid mode. And there's a hinge right here, right where the gray part ends and meets the blue part, and that's going to be how we form most of the back of the Battroid mode. The only problem here is that the clearance between the intake sections and this gray part, it's a little tight, so just kind of make sure you get that out like that. So also, as you're doing this, this section here, this gray part, it's going to move back far enough, and again, you might have to fiddle with the wings in order to get it done. Move that back far enough so that it exposes this little flip-out hook here. And it can be difficult to get that hook out with just your fingers, but if you get this thing back far enough, you can get your hand in there and pull it out. So this little hook is going to go right underneath here. There's kind of a little section for it right there. So get that in first as you're bringing this section up and around like that. Get that back down there. Again, there's a lot of just kind of junk getting in the way, and these joints are just a little too tight to make the process smooth, and that's my main issue with the figure. So bring that in, get that in like that. Also bring the arms up out of the way if you can. And part of the problem is also you kind of have to leave these pointed down like that. Okay. So maybe position them out like that as well. All right, so, and make sure that, again, that little hook has to stay out. So you're gonna do that. This is gonna hook in. This is all gonna come up, and this will be brought forward enough. Okay, so this whole section's forward enough so that you can bring this little gray locking piece down, and there's a couple little divots there that are for the little tab ends here. And just bring that in there, locks that in place. The front section of the intakes, this part here is going to lock into a little slot here. And you know, if you do it right, this will be pretty smooth and it won't require that much fiddling to get in place there. So do that. All right, we can collapse the legs. Ow. There's a tip that I tried to put my thumb on. Collapse the legs for Battroid mode. Again, there's a lot of nice like joints in this thing. It's just that some parts are needlessly tight. Flip this little section back and bring these forward. Play around with the whole wing section here. This is all gonna, similar to a gear walk mode, it's all gonna find a nice little happy place where the end of this hinge gets into the little cutout right there. And watch out for that pointy section. All right, do that. With the wings up like this. There you go. Get this all kind of happily in place, and stay there, you go. Okay. And I'm going to bring this up a bit so I can show you the head. All right, so these are just going to rest on the side here. So for the Draken ⅲ's head, especially on Keith's, because he has a unique head, this just comes up. Well, this comes up a little bit. You can kind of see there's a little bit of separation right there on the nose cone. You're going to bring these sides out like this, and that's going to allow this to flip down. Each of these little earpieces, it's on a little armature, so it can swing out and around, kind of in a U shape. So as you're moving the ear up, you just swing the whole thing up and around like that. Don't really have like a locking place, but you'll figure out where they need to go. All right, so I'll put the shield back on. Alright, so in Battroid mode, the Draken ⅲ hasn't grown too much. It's now about 1 foot tall, like most modern Valkyries. It's a pretty nice, clean design. It stays together well enough, except for that darn little thing there. Articulation-wise, you got kind of the standard, an actual like techie-looking universal joint for the hips. There's all that delicious clicking in the knees here. Also, you have this moving knee pad right there. It's a weird detail. It doesn't really do much other than like if you bring the knees forward, it can kind of help brace that, but again, doesn't really need it. As you saw in the gear walk mode, you have on mine, which is a weird squeaky twist on the ankles. You got the full-on backward motion, which is mostly for turning it back into fighter mode, and there's a tilt right there, just like that. And it's a really nice design, and I like it. Also, I forgot one thing: you can flip these little intake panels back so that his boobs look a little bit cleaner in a Battroid mode. So with the hands, because you're gonna want this thing to wield the gun in its robot mode. Also, you're gonna want to put that down like that, similar when it's landing in fighter mode, and there's the handle right here. So these articulated hands, and just to kind of show you how they open, you got this 3-finger section that opens as one part, and like I mentioned before, you have a kind of double joint on the index finger. It only opens this far, so it's not going to like do anything really expressive. Now, supposedly this little tab here, or sorry, this little slot is going to go into this little nub that's just kind of right here where the joint is for the index finger. It just doesn't hold. Like even if I put that back all the way, the little gauntlet there with the guns on it. So you put that in there. You kind of try to close this in as much as you can, and it just kind of flops out. Yeah, that sucks. For some reason, both the VF-31 Siegfried and the Sv-262 both have this problem where their default hands for the transformation just cannot hold the gun. Fortunately, you do get these large, kind of oversized hands that are fixed posed, and they just pop in on the ball joint, and those, will hold all the weapons just fine. And to give you a little comparison, here is the oversized hand, and this is the transforming hand. So it's almost like twice the size. It's kind of weird that they did that, and you get fist. Oops. You get a fist. You get. All right. You get fist, gun-holding hands, and nice splayed hands, which also reveal that this thing actually kind of has fingernails on the end there, so that's neat. But anyway, back to articulation. You got, full-on range of joints in the upper body as well, besides, all that stuff that was going on in the lower body. There's supposed to be a kind of a waist swivel here. It's tight, doesn't really work on mine. You do have the same Garwalk joint swivel for use as an ab crunch, but it does push that thing out of position, so you kind of want to pull the crotch down to put it back. The head's on a little ball jointed neck. It works pretty well. There's unfortunately just kind of still some bits of the airplane nose that's still there in the back that kind of prevents it from looking all the way around, but it works pretty well enough. You have full-on universal joints in the shoulders as well as the part of the transformation joint, because this bit doesn't really lock in anywhere. Not that it really like flops around or anything, but yeah, it's just kind of weird like that. Also, the shoulder pauldrons have their own little double joint. The arm does have a nice double jointed elbow right there, and you got the ball jointed wrists, and that's pretty much a lot. It's a really neat design, pretty solid Battroid mode. Yeah, I didn't do much with it in Garwalk mode because there's not really much you can do it with the way it locks together. But yeah, it's a rather attractive looking figure, and I do really like this design. I love the. I was like, my jaw was agape when they had the big reveal of watching this thing transform for the first time. So here it is. Here is the display stand, and kind of similarly with the fighter mode stand, you just sort of find the place where this is all going to lock together, and with the Garwalk mode stand. But anyways, flip that out a little bit, get that cupped in the crotch section. There we go. Just make sure that thing doesn't flop around. And there we go. Up on the display stand. Again, it's not going to go anywhere. But that's that. Let me just bring out the VF-31 Siegfried. And you can see they're kind of roughly the same size in Battroid mode. So Hayate is ready to maybe fight with Keith a little bit. But yeah. Overall, I was really pumped for this because the VF-31 Siegfried is a super solid figure. Go watch my video on that. Unfortunately, this feels like a bit of a step back. Not to like terrible primitive days, but more like to the renewal VF-25s, you know, with a lot of pointy bits, not quite as much refinement in terms of like, you know, die cast in the proper places. I mean, there's more locks to keep the torso together, which the YF-29 VF-25 renewals did not have at all. This toy is not nearly as frustrating as Bandai's VF-171 Nightmare Plus, so it's got that going for it. It's just that the gearwalk mode is a pain to do, which is unfortunate, and there's all this fiddling you have to do with these back joints that, or the wing joints that are just weirdly tight on, at least on my copy. If you can like loosen them a little bit with like shock oil or something, or maybe a little bit of water, just hot water in there, it'll probably help you a lot better. But yeah, it's just, the problem is that handling this toy, because it's pointy and I don't think they did all the joints and tolerances as well as they could, that just makes it more of a chore to move around. Like, I've been transforming the VF-31 for comparisons in this review, and this thing is still a joy to use no matter, you know, how much I do it. But yeah, again, I do like this design a lot, and I especially love the arm transformation with the way they just form a single part of the midsection of the airplane, which Macross fans may remember was an aspect of the old VF-9 Cutlass, which has really only appeared in video games up until now, where it actually had a cameo, a little brief cameo in Macross Delta. But yeah, so what can I say about this? It's a little frustrating again. Not terrible, just kind of a good toy. More about the looks than it is about the hand feel quality. But anyway, this has been Andrew for CollectionDX.com, and saying, may the great wind bring you good luck.